How's it going, guys? Welcome to another edition of the OurThoughts podcast, and this one's a special one, man. We are going to be reviewing the long-anticipated, long-awaited album, An Evening with Silk Sonic.
That's right. Silk Sonic finally is here. They've teased us and strung us along for an entire year, but I can't believe it's really in front of our eyes. This is the official Silk Sonic review. And
Yeah, you heard that too, right?
is that Bootsy Collins?
Whoa, yo, what the?
Woo!
Ooh, I like this better.
This is
You're
more
right.
like it, man. I got the shades on. I think we're ready for this review, my guy.
You know, we're lighting one up tonight because we are spending an evening with Silk Sonic, and to be honest, spending many evenings because this album is incredible. Welcome, guys. Oh wait, we already did the intro, so we don't have to worry about that. Let's just go ahead and skip to some talking points, man. First of all, I just want to say thank God we got this album before the holidays, because we weren't even supposed to get this album this year, allegedly, according to some interview with I think Rolling Stones, Variety, something like that, but they wanted to push it back a little bit, and I guess they heard the fan reaction to that. Thank God. And here we are. We have the album. And real quick, you know, this album is like the collab we really didn't know we needed until we got it. You know, when you think about it, like
Very true.
If you asked us a year ago, it's like, what is the collab that we really wanted to see? And you'd say the obvious ones, Drake, Kanye, all that. But Bruno Mars and Anderson .Paak is incredible. And it's like a culmination of so many different things, you know. Two artists that work so well together and incredibly talented. They both have that live instrumentation and performing background. Pandemic happened, so they were kind of forced to work together. But what is it about this particular collaboration that works so well?
What you said before is that live performer. That's something that Bruno really embodies, is being live. I think if anyone watching has ever been to a Bruno Mars concert or just a show or they've seen him perform live, he is the ultimate performer. Like, this guy, he can put on an amazing show. And I can say the same thing about Anderson .Paak. I have yet to see him perform live, but even just listening to his albums, they all feel like jam sessions, you know, like we said before.
Oh, yeah.
So they are very familiar with the live setting, and they prefer it, honestly. But also, I think their voices complement each other really well. I feel like Anderson .Paak is a little bit more gritty, a little bit more raspiness version of Bruno. And Bruno
got that stank on him.
Yeah, and Bruno obviously is just the angelic, buttery voice. So, like, put that together, you get like the perfect amalgamation of this like sexy, smooth grit that I didn't even think would ever work in the first place, and clearly it has. But no, I mean, besides the music, besides how they sound together, look at their, like, I watched their interviews. I think they did an interview directly after Silk Sonic dropped, and their chemistry is just so obvious. They are huge fans of each other. They're buddies. Like, they just love working together. There was even a moment where Anderson said when they were in the studio, they wouldn't even record. They were just having so much fun together, having too much fun, that they wouldn't even make music.
That was the problem.
Yeah,
low key.
low key, which is why we had to wait. When we asked for people, you know, what is your dream collab? It has to make sense, and this one makes so much sense, enough sense to make an entire album. So
yeah, and I think what going into that, their personalities are incredible. They have that same silly and goofy mood that, you know, reflects into the lyrics of the song itself. You know, I think of like Uptown Funk, Julio, get that stretcher, you know, that kind of thing.
Right.
And now we get iconic lines like, you know, why you got me beefing with the X-Men from the UFC.
Right.
And
Hope your traveling ass is still walking barefoot in these streets.
Oh, it's so wonderful, man. It's so beautiful. And, you know, we talk a lot about them complementing each other, but also I think they contrast in like the perfect way, because Anderson .Paak was talking about how Bruno Mars is one of those people that is just like, he will listen to a song over and over and take as many years, as months and years as it takes to get that song perfect, you know. And Bruno Mars says like, oh, you know, because I understand this is going to stand the test of time, and this is going to be forever. They're going to play this song forever, so it's got to be perfect.
Right.
Meanwhile, you got Anderson .Paak, and he has that, just like, even if it isn't improv, all of his songs feel like they're improv, or like he's performing it for the first time, like it's a one take type thing.
Yeah.
So I think that just meshed together so well. And now you get a listening experience that feels like you're at a concert, but then when you listen to it closely, you get all these little details and like sound nuggets that that are just that fulfill and really complete the listening experience, which I love. I want to discuss something real quick that has been bothering me a little bit. Some talk about this album, An Evening with Silk Sonic, is an album that wears its influences on its sleeves, you know, whether it's the Isley Brothers, you know,
Yes.
Earth, Wind and Fire, Delphonics. Bootsy Collins has a big presence on the album, and is a big influence on the album as well. Because of that, I've actually seen reviews like Pitchfork, Fantano, where they actually hold that against the album and dock off a couple points because of that. So do you think that's a fair critique? Do you think that they should hold it against the album that it's so influenced and inspired by a sound, an era, and it doesn't hold any kind of bars about that?
Yeah, I did read the Pitchfork review. I did see the Fantana review of Silk Sonic. And in my opinion, have that critique, and I think is honestly kind of bullshit. I think obviously, no shit, they're calling back to the 70s. No shit. Like, of course, they're not reinventing the wheel. The 70s already happened. That whole sound has been explored and for decades. What they're doing is calling back to it and revamping and making it modern and putting a different spin on it. You know, I think people who have that critique, then you can say that about all of Bruno Mars's albums, all of Bruno Mars's music, which they have. You know, they said that about 24 Karat Magic, how it's kind of like a cookie cutter 90s, you know, pop and R&B ripoff, but it's really not a ripoff. It's someone who, he loves playing different characters. He loves moving within different eras. He loves reinventing himself in terms of which aesthetic he's going to go towards, but he also makes it his own. Like, you take away all the influence, it sounds like Bruno Mars. Take away all the influence, it sounds like Anderson .Paak. So I feel like they kind of want to stick within the realm and the circle of sounds that were very prominent in an era that they were trying to go for, and then build and build and build and create something new and exciting. It's kind of crazy because I've actually seen a lot of very mixed reactions to this album. Me personally, just people I ask, have you heard Silk Sonic? Like, what do you think? And they're like, it's okay, you know, kind of underwhelming, you know, it's nothing
I've gotten that same reaction.
Yeah, it's like nothing I would listen to. I'm like, why? You know, it's like, it's so obvious. I think it's because it's so obvious what they're doing. It's so obvious that they're playing into this whole 70s vibe. But it's like, if you just let yourself go and like be okay with the fact that they're, you know, playing dress up, they're actually having a lot of fun and they're actually creating some really good music at the end of the day. So I don't really subscribe to that critique, in my opinion. I do have some critiques on the album for sure. This isn't a review without some critiques. But I personally think that take is just kind of cemented in something that's trying to look for the most obvious point to dock from Silk Sonic in general. Yeah,
it definitely is a very nitpicky point. I think that one of my favorite things about art is how much it can, you know, cultivate and preserve like a culture, or in this case, an era and time. And I like that this album kind of takes all the best parts of the 70s and what that was, you know. And then now you get people that only ever listen to the radio or what's new, you know, and is used to just like auto-tune, and nothing against auto-tune and 808s and, you know, computer made drums and all that. Like, we love that too. Like, don't get it twisted. Like, check out our channel. But there's something to be appreciated about someone who's still doing the live instrumentation, who's really doing it like the way that Silk Sonic is, and taking music back to its root. Especially because this music is kind of like what's popular, or the roots of this music that they're doing is kind of what's popular today. Plus, it's not like, as you said, they're not just doing impressions of 70s music. And of course, you know, they're doing certain aspects where they're calling back to some 70s stars, you know. Again, Bootsy Collins is one of the first superstars they always kind of mention. But they're using like modern melodies and mixing, which kind of gives it that extra, you know, like dimension, that oomph that maybe those 70s songs, what makes them dated. Now they kind of learn from that, and now we get this album, An Evening with Silk Sonic, and transitioning into the sound. Let's just go ahead and talk about, you know, what are some of your favorite aspects, your favorite moments on the album, any highlights you got. Go ahead and get us started, Matt.
Yes. So I think definitely a highlight is I think just the first few seconds of Fly As Me as a whole. Because when I first listened to this, I did it justice. I listened to it in order, even though I've heard the Silk Sonic intro and I've heard Leave the Door Open a million times. I was like, you know what? I'm going to listen to it as it's intended. So I'm like, okay. So like, it was a little bit of a delayed reaction. But when Fly As Me hit, and that first like, boom, whatever that is, that like little bell they have at the beginning, amazing.
I love that.
Great moment, great way to start off. It almost felt like they knew we were waiting for something new, and that was a great way to kind of kickstart us into the album. Love that moment. Love Anderson .Paak's flows on that song. He like kind of goes into this crazy bag, like where he kind of just like, it's almost, I don't know, he kind of like, I can equate it to like Kendrick's like white man flow. You know?
Yeah, let me go ahead and play a little snippet for you guys just to know what we're talking about.
Monte Carlo, hard act to follow. It's showtime, trying to boo you up like it's the Apollo.
But yeah, so like that was a great moment. Another amazing moment that I'll get into more. Obviously, on Put On a Smile. I love how they kind of do like. First, I love the structure of that song, but also the refrain that they have, the "Put On a Smile." It sounds like a classic '70s TV show like jingle, and I think that is so smart to like incorporate that, because it just like made the whole vibe just that much more rich. And it also is such a juxtaposition to what the song is about. Yeah, and then obviously the high note on Put On a Smile, the entire like last half of Blast Off. Also like the songs that we've already heard, Leave the Door Open, Smoking Out the Window, Skate, all sound completely different within the context of the entire album. They all make a lot more sense. Like the sounds that they go with on those songs, like definitely flow and they're put in the right order. Like it just made so much more sense to have the entire album that like it just felt like a complete moment after from front to back. So
yeah, man, absolutely. You're talking about Put On a Smile. That one of the things I love about this album is the sequencing of it. And Bruno actually talked a little bit about this. He said that Put On a Smile, like being put right after Smoking Out the Window, is kind of supposed to be like kind of a contrast of like Smoking Out the Window is more of that, you know, like, oh, fuck that girl, like, you know, trying to hide it. And then you go into Put On a Smile, which is, and Bootsy says right in the beginning, you know, like, tell her how you really feel.
Exactly.
And now we get to hear him, you know, that on your knees begging, you know, at your door, walking in the rain type. It's literally like they set the atmosphere by literally putting the rain in the song, which is like,
it feels like a movie. It feels like a movie.
Yeah, it feels like a movie. It feels like a Michael Jackson music video. You can imagine him just like with a coat over his shoulder, walking alone in the sidewalk in the rain. Like it's just so beautifully done. And then on top of that, then like from Put On a Smile into 777, which is kind of like I equate it to like a Heartless type thing where you're trying to like forget someone by letting it all go in Vegas, like that kind of vibe. And it follows kind of a bit of a narrative, or like at least kind of you can follow it, like the messages of the song, which I really love. Connecting to that is kind of just like the range of emotions that they explore in that album. You know, there's I think they said that the point of this album was to make fun music, but it kind of rooted in sadness or in some way, or use that sadness to make it happy, you know?
Yeah.
Like you said with Put On a Smile, that little jingle, it sounds like a cereal commercial from the 70s. And it gives it that oomph of like that of you know, fun aspect to a sad song. And the last thing I'll say about just like highlights in general, just because if I'm being honest, this whole album is a highlight to me, like front to back, just one of the most concise listening experiences. You'll be able to just repeat this whole album.
Yes.
Is that when they perform this live, there's only 9 songs, but I could easily see them performing some songs twice, just because what I call like, it's kind of like a reprise or a reprisability of it, where, you know, you have certain things like motifs and little nuances that keep coming back. Like for example, on Leave the Door Open, they have that like, can you feel it? And then they bring that back later on, I think on Fly As Me or 777, one of those songs, they bring that back. Again, just keep listening to those like little sound nuggets that keep happening over and over and over again, and you'll see kind of why this album could just be performed, you know, over and over and over again. You could transition one song into the next song and then transition back to it. It's just, you know, it's masterful. It's crazy.
It really is.
This must have taken forever to make. I mean, it kind of did. They're going to push it back, like we said. Okay, another talking point I wanted to bring up. So, You know, we talk a lot about music and how the music that really speaks to us in particular, and that, you know, keeps it in our brain when we have to do our Thoughts Awards that's happening very soon. Keep an eye out on that. We talk a lot about music being able to transport you to, you know, a new place and really move you. Where does this album take you?
This album takes me to kind of almost like a different universe. It feels like a different version of the 70s. It takes me way back to when this music was pop music, when it was how music sounded like. But it's also almost an alternate version of that. It's almost an alternate reality.
Yeah, some kind of like weird timeline, like,
yeah,
you know, rift where people are in the 70s but have knowledge of today's, you know, the UFC, like modern day references and
right.
stuff like that.
Or like the 808s that kick in at It Fly As Me. I always hear that, you know. I'm like, in that there are elements throughout the songs that are so modern but also so nostalgic at the same time, which is my shit personally. I like stuff that's
future nostalgia. Future
nostalgia is what I love. But it takes me through an entire journey. It does feel like a film. It does feel like I can visualize the different moments and the arc and the highs and lows that you would see in a movie. Like, after I listened to it for the first time, I'm like, okay, when is Silk Sonic the movie coming out? Because this literally sounds like a soundtrack to that. Yeah. And it really makes me happy because you talked about album sequencing. So many albums that have come out, big albums, Kanye, Drake, there's no album sequencing. That's something I miss from albums from, like, you know, 3-4 years ago. This one felt so intentional. It felt like there was a very clear arc that I can just go back and listen to this story again. And that's something that is so replayable for me, and what is keeping me going back to this album so many times throughout the day, throughout the weeks that it's been out. I keep revisiting this album. When I put on this album, I feel like I'm the sexiest version of myself. I feel like I'm the saddest version of myself. I feel like the most hyped version of myself. The emotions are always heightened, you know? And so there has not been an album that has made me happier than this album this entire year. But, you know, we'll get into, this is a real review, so we'll get into the things that we can critique about Silk Sonic.
Yeah, real quick, if you guys have questions and stuff you want to talk about, if we missed something, go ahead and check out our live streams. They happen every Thursday, 5 p.m. PST, 8 p.m. EST. Playlist just got linked up top to link you to some of our most recent streams. And there we have our nice little family, the OurThoughts pod community over there that we just love talking to every week. And feel free to join us. You are more than welcome there. OurThoughts Live. So some critiques. There's one giant overlying critique that we will get to in a second, but I want to hear some of yours.
Okay. Some critiques I have about Silk Sonic. It's very obvious that this was more of a Bruno album than it was an Anderson .Paak album. I'll expand on that. In that, listen to Anderson .Paak's music and then listen to Bruno's music, and Anderson .Paak does have that live feel to it. I will say some of these songs do have that live feel. Fly As Me, 777. But knowing Bruno, he is such a perfectionist. He is such a maestro in the studio that he doesn't want the imperfections of live, you know. Whereas Anderson embraces that. I think that this album would have definitely benefited from that. Actually, it benefited from something a little bit more candid, a little bit more rough around the edges. Mainly because I just thought that it would create a nice balance. I
think of before you go on, I was just gonna say that reminds me. I think of their performance on the AMAs where, you know, that line on "Smoking Out the Window." Got a badass kids running around my whole crib like it's Chuck E. Cheese.
And I understand that they want it to probably be the cleanest, most tight version of the songs for the streaming purposes, and then obviously like you said, when they do it live, they're gonna go crazy. They're gonna do so many different riffs. They're gonna reprise. They're gonna go back and they're gonna have fun with it. But I do still think that it would have benefited from a track that was mainly grounded in the live aspect of it, because back in the 70s, that's how all music was recorded. Live. They didn't really have computers like that. Another nitpick I have, this might be your overall negative, but this album is too short. This album is about 3 to 4 tracks too short, in my opinion. Right as it gets started, it ends. This needed, I know they definitely needed to cut some tracks, because obviously they were going to release it next year, so they were probably working on some tracks. But still, this album is way too short. I know that Fantano had the critique in that he thought that they have written themselves into a corner, and that it made sense why it was this short, but I don't think so. I think that they definitely could keep expanding on this idea, on Silk Sonic in general.
Doesn't Blast Off feel like it's the kickoff into the kind of, not second half, but the last kind of act of the album? Yeah,
I think it does feel like that's the turning point, but instead they kind of made that the closer, which still works. It's still a beautiful song, but it's just way too short, which is a good critique, kind of a backhanded compliment. But I think other than that though, like performance-wise, production, like the one thing I wanted from Bruno was to hear a strain in his voice. His voice is too perfect, and he strained his voice on Put On Smile, and I was like, this is all I needed. This is the perfect album. Once I heard that, I was like, this is it. This is all I've ever could ask for from Bruno and Anderson. So I have no more critiques. I simply cannot critique this project anymore.
This is kind of the greatest thing I think mankind has ever heard. I said this before we recorded, and I stand by it wholeheartedly. I am going to keep playing this album back and forth till the day I die. God, dude, we get to have this album forever. Isn't that crazy?
It's crazy. It's crazy how, like, I know 5, 6, 8 years from now, I can still return to this album. They had high expectations that they needed to fill. Obviously, we were strung along for a whole year. We were teased. We were taken advantage of. You kept saying that shit-eating grin by Anderson really was getting on my nerves every time he was teasing about showing us another song.
Let me play that clip right now just to piss me off one more time.
He's like,
do y'all want to hear a new song off the album? Nah, we gonna run it back. Let's go. Bring it back.
Y'all want to hear a song?
Nope. Oh, fuck out of here, man. Thank God you guys dropped the album, because I was about to punch a wall. So Matt, we've done all this talking about An Evening with Silk Sonic. What have you decided to rate this album?
Silk Sonic, the inaugural album by the incredible dynamic duo Bruno Mars, Anderson .Paak. This album is probably the easiest album that I have to rate by far of all the albums that we've ever reviewed on this channel. Besides The Weeknd. But I will say, this album is a perfect 10. And I don't care what you have to say about it. I don't care what Anthony Fantano told you to think about it. This is a 10. This is not a 7. This is not a solid 7 to light 8. This is a perfect 10. And I know it because I have ears. If you listen,
ain't nothing light about this album.
Ain't nothing light. This is not a light. This is a solid. This is a light. This is a strong 10 to a light 11. So this is a 10 out of 10 album. I don't care. I'm calling out Anthony Fantano right now.
We challenge you to a review off.
Redux. Silk Sonic Redux. Listen to this album again. Take that stick out of your ass and listen to this album.
Air horns.
This is a perfect album.
This dude is spitting right now. Holy shit.
You can't tell me otherwise. This is a 10.
Oh shit.
That's all I have to say.
Well, I know what I'm using as my snippet for this video to promote this video. I mean, shit, man. Matt couldn't have said it better. I couldn't have said it better myself. I'm gonna go ahead and give this a nice 10 out of 10. And this album is so perfect. There's so many different ways to describe this album, but the most precise way I can talk about it is that it is, from what we got, again, this album is kind of short, and book it, we are absolutely getting a deluxe. I would guess early 2022.
They better.
If you guys are listening to this in the future, tell me if I'm right. But from what we got, this is perfect. It's flawless.
Literally.
You know?
Literally.
Nothing. Yeah.
The moment the tickets go on sale, I'm running it up.
Easiest decision of my life. Honestly.
What else is there to say?
What else is there to say? Well, if there is something to say, let us know in the comments below. Let us know in the live streams. Again, every Thursday, 5 p.m. PST, 8 p.m. EST. And from one dynamic duo to another, Bruno, Anderson, y'all did that.
Y'all did your thing. And with that, our Sonic review. Thank you for checking us out. Let us know your thoughts on this album. Obviously, we love it. If you hate it, let us know and we'll tell you that you're wrong. But let us know your thoughts down below. For sure, check us out every single week we stream if you guys want to talk about the album a little bit more, or if you want to talk about literally anything else in the world, hit us up, Our Thoughts Live, every single Thursday, or if we tell you otherwise. But with that, I'm going to go listen to this album one more time. I hope you do too. We'll check you guys out on the next one. Follow us on our socials, Our Thoughts Podcast on everything, and we'll see you in the next one. Peace.